Section 14, Noon. The Christine Ministry of Jesus, the Introductory Epoch. Chapter 65. The Harbinger had paved the way. The Logos had been introduced to men as love made manifest, and he must now begin his Christine ministry. And he went forth into the wilderness to be alone with God, that he might look into his inner heart, and note its strength and worthiness. And with himself he talked. He said, My lower self is strong. By many ties I am bound down to carnal life. Have I the strength to overcome and give my life a willing sacrifice for men? When I shall stand before the face of men, and they demand a proof of my Messiahship, what will I say? And then the tempter came and said, If you be Son of God, command these stones to turn to bread. And Jesus said, Who is it that demands a test? It is no sign that one is Son of God because he does a miracle. The devils can do mighty things. Did not the black magicians do great things before the Pharaoh? My words and deeds in all the walk of life shall be proof of my Messiahship. And then the tempter said, If you will go into Jerusalem, and from the temple pinnacle cast down yourself to earth, the people will believe that you are the Messiah sent from God. This you can surely do, for did not David say, He gives his angels charge concerning you, and with their hands will they uphold lest you should fall. And Jesus said, I may not tempt the Lord my God. And then the tempter said, Look forth upon the world, behold its honor and its fame, behold its pleasure and its wealth. If you will give your life for these, they shall be yours. But Jesus said, Away from me all tempting thoughts, my heart is fixed. I spurn this carnal self with all its vain ambition and its pride. For 40 days did Jesus wrestle with the carnal self. His higher self prevailed. He then was hungry, but his friends had found him, and they ministered to him. Then Jesus left the wilderness, and in the consciousness of holy breath he came unto the camp of John and taught. Chapter 66. Among the followers of John were many men from Galilee. The most devout were Andrew, Simon, James, and John, with Philip and his brother of Bethesda. One day as Andrew, Philip, and the son of Zebedee were talking with the Harbinger, the Logos came, and John exclaimed, Behold the Christ! And then the 3 disciples followed Jesus, and he asked, What do you seek? And the disciples asked, Where do you live? And Jesus answered, Come and see. And Andrew called his brother Simon, saying, Come with me, for I have found the Christ. When Jesus looked into Simon's face, he said, Behold a rock, and Peter is your name. And Philip found Nathanael sitting by the tree, and said, My brother, come with me, for I have found the Christ. In Nazareth he abides. Nathanael said, Can anything of good come out of Nazareth? And Philip answered, Come and see. When Jesus saw Nathanael come, he said, Behold an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no guile. Nathanael said, How can you speak about me thus? And Jesus said, I saw you as you sat there beneath the fig tree over there before your brother called. Nathanael lifted up his hands and said, This surely is the Christ, the King for whom the harbingers often testified. And John went forth and found his brother James and brought him to the Christ. The 6 disciples went with Jesus to the place where he abode. And Peter said, We long have sought for you, Christ. We came from Galilee to John. We thought that he was Christ, but he confessed to us that he was not, that he was but the harbinger sent forth to clear the way, and make the pathway easy for the coming King. And when you came, he said, Behold the Christ. And we would gladly follow where you go. Lord, tell us what to do. And Jesus said, The foxes of the earth have homes, the birds have nests, I have no place to lay my head. He who would follow me must give up all the cravings of the self and lose his life in saving life. I come to save the lost, and man is saved when he is rescued from himself. But men are slow to comprehend this doctrine of the Christ. And Peter said, I cannot speak for any other man, but for myself I speak. I will leave all and follow where you lead. And then the others spoke and said, You have the words of truth. You came from God, and if we follow in your footsteps, we cannot miss the way. Then Jesus and the 6 disciples sat a long, long time in silent thought. Chapter 67. Now on the morrow Jesus came again, and stood with John beside the ford. And John prevailed on him to speak, and standing forth he said, You men of Israel, hear, the kingdom is at hand. Behold, the great key-keeper of the age stands in your midst, and with the spirit of Elijah he is come. Be full, for he has turned the key, the mighty gates fly wide, and all who will may greet the King. Behold these multitude of women, children, men, they throng the avenues, they crowd the outer courts, each seem to be intent to be the first to meet the King. Behold, the censer comes and calls. Whoever will may come, but he who comes must will to prune himself of every evil thought, must overcome desire to gratify the lower self, must give his life to save the lost. The nearer to the kingdom gate you come, more spacious is the room, the multitudes have gone. If men could come unto the kingdom with their carnal thoughts, their passion and desires, there scarcely would be room for all. But when they cannot take these through the narrow gate, they turn away. The few are ready to go in and see the King. Behold, John is a mighty fisher, fishing for the souls of men. He throws his great net out into the sea of human life. He draws it in, and it is full. But what a medley catch! A catch of crabs, of lobsters, sharks, and creepy things, which now and then the fish of better kind. Behold, the thousands come to hear the wild man of the hills. They come in crowds that he may wash them in the crystal flood, and with their lips they do confess their sins. But when the morrow comes, we find them in their haunts of vice again, reviling John and cursing God and heaping insults on the King. But blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see the King. And blessed are the strong in heart, for they shall not be cast about by every wind that blows. But while the fickle and the thoughtless have gone back to Egypt land for leeks and carnal herbs to satisfy their appetite, the pure in heart have found the King. But even those whose faith is weak, and who are not but carnal manifest, will some day come again and enter in with joy to see the King. O men of Israel, take heed to what this prophet has to say. Be strong in mind, be pure in heart, be vigilant in healthfulness, the kingdom is at hand. When Jesus had thus said, he went his way, and with his 6 disciples came to Bethany, and they abode with Lazarus many days. Chapter 68. The news soon spread about that Jesus, King of Israel, had come to Bethany, and all the people of the town came forth to greet the King. And Jesus, standing in the midst of them, exclaimed, Behold, indeed, the King is come, but Jesus is not King. The kingdom truly is at hand, but men can see it not with carnal eyes. They cannot see the King upon the throne. This is the kingdom of the soul. Its throne is not an earthly throne. Its king is not a man. When human kings found kingdoms here, they conquer other kings by force of arms. One kingdom rises on the ruin of another one. But when our Father God sets up the kingdom of the soul, he pours his blessings forth like rain upon the thrones of earthly kings who rule in righteousness. It is not the rule that God would overthrow. His sword is raised against injustice, wantonness, and crime. Now, while the kings of Rome do justice, then love mercy, and walk humbly with their God, the benediction of the triune God will rest upon them all. They need not fear a messenger whom God sends forth to earth. I am not sent to sit upon a throne to rule as Caesar rules, and you may tell the ruler of the Jews that I am not a claimant for his throne. Men call me Christ, and God has recognized the name, but Christ is not a man. The Christ is universal love, and love is king. This Jesus is but man who has been fitted by temptations overcome, by trials multiform to be a temple through which Christ can manifest to men. Then hear, you men of Israel, hear. Look not upon the flesh, it is not king. Look to the Christ within, who shall be formed in every one of you, as he is formed in me. When you have purified your hearts by faith, the King will enter in, and you will see his face. And then the people asked, What must we do that we may make our bodies fit abiding places for the King? And Jesus said, Whatever tends to purity in thought and word and deed will cleanse the temple of the flesh. There are no rules that can apply to all, for men are specialists in sin. Each has his own besetting sin. And each must study for himself how he can best transmute his tendency to evil things to that of righteousness and love. Until men reach the higher plane and get away from selfishness, this rule will give the best results. Do unto other men what you would have them do for you. And many of the people said, We know that Jesus is the Christ, the King who has come, and blessed be his name. Now Jesus and his 6 disciples turned their face toward Jerusalem, and many people followed them. But Matthew, son of Alphaeus, ran on before, and when he reached Jerusalem, he said, Behold, the Christians come, the multitudes come forth to see the king. But Jesus did not speak to anyone until he reached the temple court, and then he opened up a book and read, Behold, I send my messenger, and he will pave the way, and Christ, for whom you wait, will come unto this temple unannounced. Behold, for he will come, says God, the Lord of hosts. Then he closed the book. He said no more. He left the temple halls, and with his 6 disciples went his way to Nazareth. And they abode with Mary, Jesus' mother, and her sister Miriam. Chapter 69. Next day, as Peter walked about in Nazareth, he met the ruler of the synagogue, who asked, Who is this Jesus lately come to Nazareth? And Peter said, This Jesus is the Christ of whom our prophets wrote. He is the King of Israel. His mother Mary lives on Miriam Way. The ruler said, Tell him to come up to the synagogue, for I would hear his plea. And Peter ran and told Jesus what the ruler said, but Jesus answered not. He went not to the synagogue. Then in the evening time the ruler came up Miriam Way. In the home of Mary found that Jesus and his mother all alone. And when the ruler asked for proof of his messiahship, and why he went not to the synagogue when he was bidden, Jesus said, I am not slave to any man. I am not called unto this ministry by a priest. It is not mine to answer when men call. I come the Christ of God. I answer unto God alone. Who gave you right to ask for proof of my messiahship? My proof lies in my words and works, and so if you will follow me, you will not lack for proof. And then the ruler went his way. He asked himself, What manner of man is this to disregard the ruler of the synagogue? The people of the town came out in throngs to see the Christ and hear him speak, but Jesus said, A prophet has no honor in his native town among his kin. I will not speak in Nazareth until the works I speak and words I do in other towns have won the faith of men. Until men know that God has Christed me to manifest eternal love, good will to you, my kin. I bless you with boundless love, and I bespeak for you abundant joy and happiness. He said no more, and all the people marveled much because he would not speak in Nazareth. Chapter 70. In Cana, Galilee, there was a marriage feast, and Mary and her sister Miriam, and Jesus and 6 disciples were among the guests. The ruler of the feast had heard that Jesus was a master sent from God, and he requested him to speak. And Jesus said, There is no tie more sacred than the marriage tie. The chain that binds 2 souls in love is made in heaven, and man can never sever it to twain. The lower passions of the twain may cause a union of the twain, a union as when oil and water meet. And then a priest may forge a chain and bind the twain. This is not marriage genuine, it is a counterfeit. The twain are guilty of adultery. The priest is party to the crime, and that was all that Jesus said. As Jesus stood apart in silent thought, his mother came and said to him, The wine has failed. What shall we do? And Jesus said, Pray, what is wine? It is but water with the flavoring of grapes. And what are grapes? They are but certain kinds of thought made manifest, and I can manifest that thought in water will be wine. He called the servants, and he said to them, Bring in 6 water pots of stone, a pot for each of these my followers, and fill them up with water to the brim. The servants brought the water pots and filled them to their brim. And Jesus with a mighty thought stirred up the ethers till they reached the manifest, and lo, the water blushed and turned to wine. The servants took the wine and gave it to the ruler of the feast, who called the bridegroom in and said to him, This wine is best of all. Most people, when they give a feast, bring in the best wine at first. But lo, you have reserved the best until the last. And when the ruler and the guests were told that Jesus, by the power of thought, had turned the water into wine, they were amazed. They said, This man is more than man. He surely is the Christed one who prophets of the olden times declared would come. And many of the guests believed on him and gladly would have followed him. Chapter 71. The city of Capernaum was by the Sea of Galilee, and Peter's home was there. The homes of Andrew, John, and James were near. These men were fishermen and must return to tend their nets, and they prevailed on Jesus and his mother to accompany them. And soon with Philip and Nathanael they were resting by the sea in Peter's home. The news spread through the city and along the shore that Judah's king had come, and multitudes drew near to press his hand. And Jesus said, I cannot show the king unless you see with eyes of soul, because the kingdom of the king is in the soul. And every soul a kingdom is. There is a king for every man. This King is love, and when his love becomes the greatest power in life, it is the Christ, so Christ is King. And every one may have his Christ dwell in his soul as Christ dwells in my soul. The body is the temple of a king, and men may call a holy man a king. He who will cleanse his mortal form and make it pure, so pure that love and righteousness may dwell unsullied side by side within its walls, is king. The kings of earth are clothed in royal robes and sit in state, that men may stand in awe of them. A king of heaven may wear a fisher's garb, may sit in a mart of trade, may till the soil or be a gleaner in the field, may be a slave in mortal chains, may be adjudged a criminal by men, may languish in a prison cell, may die upon a cross. Men seldom see what others truly are. The human senses sense what seems to be, and that which seems to be, and that which is, may be diverse in every way. The carnal man beholds the outer man, which is the temple of the king, and worships at his shrine. The man of God is pure in his heart. He sees the king, he sees with eyes of soul. And when he rises to the plane of Christine consciousness, he knows that he himself is king, is love, is Christ, and so is Son of God. You men of Galilee, prepare to meet your king. And Jesus taught the people many lessons as he walked with them beside the sea. End of section.